Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Evangeline Chima. I am the founder and executive director of Black Mentorship, Inc., an organization committed to advancing the careers of Black professionals through leadership and personal development training so as to bridge barriers such as income inequality and to foster a sense of belonging for all people. It has been a personal journey this past few weeks, organizing and moderating the Let's Talk Mentorship series. It has given me an opportunity to continue discovering myself in ways that I have always known, but yet deeper. I hope for you too that these sessions have provided you an opportunity to reflect on your personal and career journey. The year 2020 so far has been very challenging and unpredicted. We went from having to deal with COVID pandemic to protests against police brutality and racial discrimination. I hope that these events, some tragic, has given us all time to reflect and an opportunity to realize now is the time to stop tearing each other down and stop the blame game. It is time to come together, to love each other, support each other, and learn what makes us all unique. I hope among the many takeaways from our Let's Talk Mentorship series that you will be moving forward with a mindset of empowering each other in any way that is within your ability. One of my favorite quotes of all times is from Maya Angelou, and it goes, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." I am very happy that I have panelists who are committed to promoting career advancement. I am very honored to have Pam Damoff, Member of Parliament, House of Commons, Canada, representing Oakville, North Burlington with us here today. Pam, BMI is really privileged to have you. We thank you for your time. I really thank you. And I thank everybody, all the panelists. I also want to use this opportunity to thank all the attendees. I hope this mentorship series has provided you the skills required to reach for your fullest potentials, whatever that may be. A few important elements or housekeeping rules. Please be informed that we are recording this session. We will start with our panel discussion. When we finish, we'll open the Q&A window for questions you would like the panelists to address. As usual, our web host will be working diligently to relay your questions to the panelists. We encourage you to enter your questions anytime throughout the session. I am going to start, and I'm going to start to introduce, let our wonderful, fantastic panelists introduce themselves. So let me start with you, Pam. Please take a few minutes, say hello to our attendees and introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Evangeline, and thank you for inviting me tonight and to my fellow panelists. I'm really looking forward to it. I am the MP for Oakville, North Burlington, and before I was in politics, I worked in real estate investment banking. And I am currently the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Services, and in the last Parliament, I was Vice Chair of the Status of Women Committee, as well as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health, and I've been on the Public Safety Committee since I was elected. So always busy. And I run a Young Women in Leadership program in my riding to give young women an opportunity to mentor with someone to give them an opportunity to see what career opportunities are out there. So when I heard about your panel and what you were doing, I was really excited to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you so much. Marrick, I recently connected with Marrick, and the first question he asked me was, how can I support you? What better way than to share his insights and experiences with all of us? Marrick, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Evangeline, for hosting this event this evening and for the invitation. Second, I want to thank everyone, all the participants that are here and logging in. It's because of you that we, Evangeline and the panelists, are here. We want to hear from you guys. So when the opportunity arises, please make sure you get your comments and questions into the box. We want to hear from you and get you some answers. And then third, I'd like to thank my distinguished group of co-panelists. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the evening and having a great discussion, a good time. My name is Marrick McDonald. I'm the current president of APIC's Toronto chapter. We are a premier partner with ASCM, Association for Supply Chain Management, which is the world's largest internationally recognized supply chain association. Toronto chapter is the 5th largest chapter in North America, and there are over 170 chapters. I'm here representing not only the board of directors, but the 800 professional members and students that we have across the GTA. In addition to my work with APICS, I'm an operations consultant focusing on leadership development, frontline leadership, where the hands meet the work, straight on up to the VPs. VPs and above, we leave them alone, but everybody in between we take care of. In addition to that, I'm a father. So I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, and my wife, who I hope is happy at home. And that's pretty much it for me. If I continue on, I'll be getting into shoe size and favorite colors. So that's me. Glad to be here, guys.
Thank you, Marrick. Glad to have you. Carol and I met at a recent event where I shared with her my vision of creating exceptional professionals through mentorship. And it so happens she shares the same optimism for today's professionals. Carol, please introduce yourself.
So thank you, Evangeline. I feel so grateful for that serendipitous meeting. Our plans, I think, for connecting around the issue of mentorship were rudely interrupted by a pandemic. This will bring us back together to scheme on how we might collaborate. So I am an educator. I'm currently at Sheridan College as Vice President, Student Experience and Enrollment Management. But I've had a very long career that has spanned the classroom, teaching and research, but also senior administration in various forms. And I thought that I would provide insight into that career and its relevance to mentoring by reflecting on the fact that 30 years ago, 30, I taught one of the very first courses offered in a business school in Canada that focused on women and minorities in organizations and in management. The course was trailblazing at the time. It covered systemic barriers and the impact of structural determinism and exclusionary culture. And of course, it also contemplated the ways and means that we could succeed in those environments. And one of those strategies for success was then, as it remains now, mentoring. So tonight, as we contemplate if mentoring, matters, I would offer that one of the reasons why mentoring is still relevant is because over those 30 years, some of the very fundamental features of exclusion remain stubbornly fixed. What I think has changed and is exciting is that mentoring has moved, and it is very much now more oriented towards cultivating change agents and co-creators of inclusive culture. At its very best, mentoring is transformative and mutually transformative. So I'm immensely excited to be part of this conversation. And I think we'll hear, threads of the value and transformational value of mentoring through the night. So thank you so much for including me.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. That was really lovely. Thank you. Lola, I worked with Lola at City of Toronto, and we're connected. And over a mutual ambition to get to the fullest potential of our careers. I'm very happy that we are both pursuing our desires to be the best we can. Welcome, Lola.
Thank you. Sorry I was late. I was just having some technical difficulties.
Yeah. If you can introduce yourself.
Thanks everyone for being here tonight. I am Lola. I am a founder of Afrofusion Soup Line, which is basically we are the first Black-owned, female-owned soup line. We are consumer packaged good, so we are sold in retail stores across Ontario for now, and we're scaling up to going to big retail stores. I guess one of the key things that moved me to start a business, as Evangeline said, we've worked together in IT, and I still do IT on the side as well. But starting the entrepreneurial part was because I felt Canada was a melting pot of cultures, and there was a gap in the food space when it came to ethnic or African flavors and foods that were easily accessible. So that's how I started the venture. And I started with soup because I felt, there's only so much, I love tomato soup, I love cream of mushroom, but there's only so much of that you can have. So I wanted to shake up the soup aisle a little bit with some African flavors and spices. So I'm glad to be here and share some of my knowledge and my experience so far in my not so long, but not so short life.
Thank you. Last but not the least, Dr. Chinedu. Chinedu believes in authenticity and pursuing a career you have passion for. His passion for empowering those after him is contagious. Dr. Chinedu, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you, Evangeline, for that very amazing intro. Short and sweet, packed the punch. I appreciate that. Thank you, my esteemed panelists. I'm very, very excited to be on this panel with you guys, and I look forward to us sharing knowledge to all of you wonderful folks out there who've tuned in today. Where can I start? I think you took the words right out of my mouth, Evangeline, in regards to just my passion for wanting to see not only myself succeed, but all those around me. And this has been something from the very beginning, where I'm the first of 4 and I'm the second of, I guess, tens, maybe about 40, 50 grandchildren in my family. And at the end of the day, you're only as strong and as great as all those around you that are successful. And so mentorship is dear to me. I'm a product of mentorship. My success has come from that in many forms of fashion, whether it be informal or formal. And so I currently work in Baltimore. And so Lola, later we could talk about how we can get some soup to the US. But based in Baltimore, I'm a director in business development for a small startup biotech company that is really wanting to be the David amongst the Goliath, so to speak, in our field. We build tests that help clinicians identify the best therapies for cancer patients. And so science is dear to me. I said mentorship, but let's not forget business as well. How do we take the science and make products that can help people? So that's my space. I got there through basically the research. And so I've trained as a molecular biologist, and I took that experience, coupled it with biotech, and here we are. And so I have had, many peaks and valleys along the way, and I'm here to share whichever peak or valley that can best help our people out there who's tuned in to improve their direction. And I'm super excited to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Chinedu. This is awesome. So we're going to jump right into it. I think we already touched this a little bit, but Chinedu, since I had you last, I'm going to start with you. Basically the theme for today's Let's Talk Mentorship is mid-career mentoring. So is mid-career mentoring essential to overcoming barriers? Chinedu, can we get your take, please?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think many think or believe that once they've entered their career or start a career of choice, that they have reach the promised land, so to speak. But for after a couple months, maybe a couple years, what you find is just attaining that particular position isn't enough. And, you know, going through high school or going through undergrad or going through grad school, there are already, you know, pieces in place that you can lean on and got in the form of guidance counselors or in the form of professors that you can talk to. But when you're in the real world and you're working at that point, who do you turn to? Who do you then reach out to help you figure out, okay, what are my next steps, or how do I get to the next goal that I've figured out to be what I want to attain next. And that's where mentorship comes into play. As I said earlier, it can come in many forms. It can, you know, your mentor can be a peer, it can be someone who is your manager, and it can be someone that doesn't necessarily look like you. At the end of the day, it's about reaching out, because their respective experiences, their connections, they can also be yours and beneficial to your ability to move forward.
Awesome. Lola, do you want to jump into?
So yeah, definitely those are a great points, Chinedu. And I would say that mentors have played a very huge role in my life. And I guess we'll be talking more about that in career transitions and pivoting and all that. But the roles that mentors have played, and they have not most of the time look like me. Or so a mentor could be anybody, could be a peer. Evangeline has been a mentor of mine, you know, when we have panics at work and I'm like, oh my God, you know, can you help me review my document or something? So having somebody to, the best way it resonates though, and has a closer or a stronger impact, is when the person looks like you. Is one of the reasons for my success is because, you know, I met somebody who was a lady who was working in IT and was successful. And I thought, she looks like me, she's a woman, she's an immigrant. So if she can do it, then I can. So I think that also, when it comes to mentoring and Black mentorship, I think is very, very vital. But nonetheless, it's also important that, you know, as they say now, one of the key words that we're using now, stronger together. It's not just about, mentors don't have to only be of your race. Be open to sharing and getting knowledge from all and every background, you know. So, you know, Chinedu could possibly be a mentor of mine, even though I'm not in science, but who knows, right? So it's you have to be open-minded to getting ideas from every and anyone.
Carol, can I come to you to jump in on that?
Well, I'm going to repeat some. I have been supported in any number of ways in my career by such a vast variety of people who I would define as mentors. And again, some look like me, some don't, some from the most unlikely places. And what has always been important in those relationships is that resonance and that spark of recognition of shared experience. That, you know, yeah, I get what you mean. Yep, I felt that, or I understand that mutual understanding and the capacity, I think, again, to grow together in your exploration of solutions, of just, you know, a reality check. Sometimes it's just a reality check. Yeah. I have been well supported, and I have, again, through my whole career, seen it as such an essential component, an extension of educating. And I am very passionate about peer-to-peer mentorship. And so in my current role at Sheridan, I am thrilled to have an opportunity to develop leadership programming for students that includes extensive peer-to-peer mentorship, and connect that then to mentors in the community that can foster the success of our students as they graduate. So.
Awesome. Marrick, can you add one or two points to that as well?
Yeah, I would say that mid-career or the requirement for mentorship at mid-career is when it is most essential. You know, when we're coming out of school and we're trying to get our first jobs and figure things out, you want a little bit of guidance, but I hate to say it, you got to go through the lumps. Like that is when you feel the tough time, you know, the long hours and the rough shifts and making the mistakes, because that's what builds the character and really tests your commitment to the path that you're on. When you get to a mid-career position, that is when you're trying to generally smooth out your skills, and more than work in businesses, you work on businesses. You know, you move from being that person that, you know, sending reports on time and that kind of thing to saying, how can we push things forward? How can we develop the people around us? How can we, you know, streamline the processes? And that's where, to everyone else's point, you use other people's experience through mentorship to kind of give you the key, right? Like why rehash it when you've gone that far, you know? At that point, you're around people that are just as committed as you and, you know, have blazed a path or a trail of similar length to some degree that you can lean on. So why not take advantage of it?
Good point. Pam, I'm going to come to you, but I'm going to add to that as well. As a woman in government, which is often dominated by men, what is your experience when it comes to inequality at work? What did you learn, and how have you been able to continue winning?
Well, both in politics and my previous career, I've, you know, investment banking has, especially when I first started out, was predominantly male dominated, and certainly white male dominated. You know, when I first got elected, it was funny, the women's washroom had been created out of what was a larger men's washroom in Center Block, because at the time it was built, there was no need for women's washrooms for MPs. So, you know, I certainly have experienced it over my career. It's one of the reasons that I do think, though, that mentorship is so important, and why, especially, you know, Lola, I heard you say that mentors didn't always look like you. I think 16% of small and medium enterprises in Canada are owned by women. That number owned by Black women is even smaller. How important is it for young girls and young Black girls to see someone like you and say, I can do it too, right? So I certainly have seen inequality in the workplace. I've experienced it, but I think we all need to be vocal, and those of us who can in positions of leadership to call out where we see it. It's not only the right thing to do, there's an economic reason to do it as well. So it's, you know, as with so many things, there are economic reasons to be closing the gender wage gap. It not just helps women, it helps the economy in general. So I think we still have a long way to go, but we've come a long way from when I first started out in the early 80s. So
that's true. We've come a long way. Still have a whole lot of work to do, but you know, the good thing is that we are on it, and we will continue working on it. Carol, I'm going to come to you with finding your voice. How can someone facing challenges at work or school, for that matter, how can they find their voice? How have you faced any challenges in the past where you needed to talk to people you disagreed with? How did you handle that?
So, you know, the perspective I've taken on this, and through the lens of mid-career, really picks up on Marrick's points about, you know, particularly mid-career, when you're starting to shift or contemplate that next step, or starting to, you know, maybe reimagine it. You know, we will have many, many different careers. This is a new feature of our economy. One of the fundamentals for me around finding your voice is to flip, particularly in mid-career, but on through your whole career, to flip your tendency to evaluate your career as navigating what is outside of you. in terms of your job prospects or some specific interactions in your workplace, the economy and what opportunities are opening up or who you need to network with. And all of those things are vital. But I would argue that an important exercise, an important discipline is to give equal attention to your internal landscape, particularly at mid-career. And so finding your voice for me is about that introspective process by which you consolidate and reconsolidate your identity, your values. And it is precisely at mid-career, when you've had some experience, when you are starting to see what works, what doesn't work, where you're hitting barriers, that I think you need to take stock about. What are your values, your preferences? What are your great ideas? Like, what are your big ideas that you're passionate about, your insights and your aspirations? And so I think finding your voice in the first instance does require that cultivating that self-awareness. And developmental theory would tell us that self-awareness is really essential in rendering our own capacity to architect our lives. And so again, at mid-career, vital to make that internal investment. But I think, you know, to your point about finding yourselves, contemplating your voice and how to be heard. You know, we could probably spend an entire hour on talking about what it means to find your voice when you are othered. And much has been written, and I'm sure that everyone listening tonight and on the panel has had these experiences about feeling not heard, about having that sense that your ideas are discounted or appropriated, being dismissed, being overlooked for opportunity. And again, we could talk a lot about specific strategies to be deployed, but I think I would maintain that when you start with an internal process of consolidating your sense of self, you have an incredibly powerful instrument for addressing those circumstances, because the alignment between yourself, the way you express yourself, creates an authenticity. It creates this a foundation for establishing credibility, for knowing what your assets are, for being able to express your assets, for being able to have make a compelling case to influence others. So I think that the process of self-discovery, the process and ongoing work of reflection is the way that we continue to evolve that self-awareness and that identity. And then with that, again, I think you have one of the most powerful instruments for being distinctive, for staying focused, and for having the necessary grounding equipment for being heard, for having your voice heard. So again, to speak to the value of mentoring in that, mentoring in that special relationship and that trust-based relationship, that relationship that is often grounded in common experience, is vital to providing the safe space to accelerate, incite that journey, and to have someone also mirror for you as you explore and as you test and ground who you are. So I would, again, I'd say that finding your voice for me is very much about making the deliberate investment in your internal life. I think it is a lifelong investment to make. It wears well over time. And that I think that a mentor, particularly at the mid-career stage, is a vital companion and partner in that journey.
Knowing yourself, knowing your internal self. Okay, so you know yourself, you figured out that career, and you think you're ready to go, you're moving on, and your family and friends doubt the career decision that you have made. Chinedu, I'm gonna come to you with this. How do you remain focused?
Yeah, that's a real one, because your family many a times are one of your first cheerleaders, right? When you start off your path, and what happens, and I really like what you said, Carol, in regards to finding your voice by first identifying your aspirations and what you believe in, because that's key. Because what ends up happening is, as you evolve, the whole nurture versus nurture, right? You start to think for yourself. You start to think beyond the cultural belief system that you grew up in, because you're now exposed to many environmental experiences that start to shape what you believe in as an individual. And so as you start to do that, what tends to happen is what you learn outside the walls of home, your family, start to clash with some of the beliefs that you were raised in. And when you figure out who you are in regards to your aspirations and what you want to do, that should be your compass. That should be your focus, because what's going to happen is, it may be family, it may not be, but you're going to hear what seems to be naysayers, but their intent is to really drive you to success by ways they understand. You need to kind of block out the noise. And I can tell you from experience, many of you guys, and I'm sure Lola, you could probably attest to this, with Nigerian parents, many times they have an idea of what success looks like. And they want you to be, one of these 3 different professions. No need to name them. I think many of you guys have heard them before. And in doing so, all in good intent, right? All with the mindset of, I want my son or daughter to be successful. I want them to be well known in the community and beneficial to the community, right? And I'll name the professions: engineer, doctor, or lawyer, right? So the idea there makes sense. But at the end of the day, you have to find that passion, right? Because you have to be able to sustain the energy on that journey of success. And it can't come from fleeting feelings of making other people happy. They need to come from within. It needs to come back to the aspirations. It needs to come back to the ideas that you have developed, that you can be able to sleep at night and say, you know what? Yeah, I did good today. And what happens is that your family will always be there. They will always be there, and they may not understand initially, but over time, they'll come around. And this happened with me. Undergrad, med school was the plan. No other plan. The only plan. And as that started to evolve, I didn't really do great in the first couple classes in bio. I just said, you know what? I'm gonna do economics. But I had a voice in me that said, you know what? No, you can't. You have to become this doctor. This is what the desire is. And you find middle grounds. For me, I made a compromise. I found that I can be a Ph.D. and still enter biotech and still do what I need to do and make my parents proud. So that was my compromise, and it worked. But my sister, I'll use my sister as an example, MD as well, was the ask. She became an artist by profession in undergrad that eventually went to med school on her own. So at the end of the day, again, I'm just echoing what you said, Carol, in regards to finding your voice internally first. Once you do that, the decisions you make are going to be seamless. They may be difficult, but at the end of the day, your family will come around, and they'll root for you. They're your first fans, and they'll continue to be your fans.
Well said. That question was actually from one of our attendees, so I hope she's on and she's listening. That's good points. I'm going to shift a little bit. I'm going to go over to career future post-pandemic. And Marrick, I'm going to come to you with this question. Everybody is talking about what our future will look like post-pandemic. Not that we have any idea, but we are thinking, we are planning. how would you suggest that we go about, developing skills that may be required in the future post-pandemic? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. First, I'll say, and I think Carol mentioned it earlier, the future is built for the hustlers. The careers of the future are not going to be, I get into a company, I work it for 35 years, get the gold watch and a pension. That's gone. So plan for multiple career changes, plan for side gigs and hustles, and multiple experiences to upgrade education and experiences. So if there's a need for that, come see us at Apex or go see Carol over at Sheridan. She'll be glad to help. Across industries in general, I think digitalization is going to continue to be a theme, and definitely over the next 3 to 5 years. So whether you're currently working in a job or job searching, I would begin to raise my antennas towards how that digitalization is going to impact the industry you're in. If you get on the service side of that or the demand side of that and really start to understand it, then you can kind of get ahead of the curve and also maybe lend to some solutions, which will put you in a great spot. The third thing that I would say is kind of a summary of actually the last few answers, but as much as possible, get as close as you can to your passion and your skill sets and the things that bring you joy. When you get to this place, this is where you're going to spend the most amount of energy easily. This is where you're going to feel the most successful, where obstacles are going to seem less insurmountable. And more than anything, you're going to feel more accomplished and add more value. And value is something that will never go out of style. If you become known in your circle or your industry for providing that specific piece of value to it. So just to sum things up, prepare for the hustle. For people that are in school and finishing up school and saying, when will this be over? It's never over. Buckle in. Think digital in your industry. That's really going to be able to, if you put that slant on it, you'll be able to stay close to the changes. And then thirdly, do the things that you enjoy. People, as the others have mentioned, people recognize and acknowledge and feel authenticity. They know when you're being real with them. And we all want to have fun and enjoy our time while we're being successful. So those are 3 things I would suggest.
Good points. Good points. Do the things that you love. I like that. And that actually flows really good into career transition. And Lola, IT, senior business lead, boom, businesswoman. So how were you able to arrive at that decision to branch off into something I say is very adventurous? Lola.
So I was smiling a lot when Chinedu was talking about medical school, because I don't know if you know Evangeline during our personal conversations, but I am a medical school dropout as well. So, so I transitioned from medical school and I went left. I went totally into communications and media. So my dad took years to forgive me for that. So, but I felt like after my first year, I just felt I wasn't, it was easier in high school, you pass your chemistry and all that, but when it started getting very technical, I felt like, was I doing this just for my parents or for me? So I transitioned then into the arts. But then when I got into the arts and I moved to Canada and I was in university here, I started thinking about like, okay, so how can I make money while studying communications? Am I going to work at City TV, or what am I going to do with this? And so I fell into investment. So Pam, I started my career in investments and portfolio management and working, crazy hours. I did my CSC, was working towards maybe doing a CFA. And then I, from there, transitioned into IT, and now I'm working in entrepreneurship. So as Marrick said, you have to follow your passion, be focused, because all through this while, I was still focused at being the best at what I was doing at the time. But then I will pivot based on what I felt like, where I felt like I could be my best. So, and, as you know, from working in IT and being mentors to people, because people wanted to know how you could be a business analyst, how do you work as a consultant? And so I would coach my friends, bring people along. And so, but after a while, and because I'd made that decision to move into IT way ahead of my peers because of the mentors that I met, I had spent a lot of years, I'd risen up in my career pretty fast within IT. And because my communications degree also kind of merged with my business analysis career, so no knowledge was lost on that. So I've done a lot of like career transitions, and so the risk, it was easier for me to take that risk because using my IT experience, I'd started a company with my husband, and we'd built it for about 5 years. And so the plan was to leave IT, corporate IT, and move into the quote unquote family IT business. And then I came up with this amazing idea to start a soup line. And my husband is like, what is wrong with you? That wasn't the plan. But, I was like, I want to do something that I feel passionate about. And we work crazy hours. So we basically have these 2 companies that we're pushing from the ground up. But it's exciting, and I will not trade it for anything. So what I would say is, like, Marrick said, and Chinedu has said as well, do what you're passionate about, because you never get tired of it. It doesn't matter if you're working in an organization, or if you have a side gig, or you have multiple things you're doing, if it's music and you're also working as a doctor or an MP or in government, but have something that excites you. And I would say that mentorship is one of the key things that actually excites me, because even as an entrepreneur now, it's beyond me now. It's beyond making my parents proud and making up to my dad for dropping out of medical school. Now he's happy, he sees me. It's like, oh, my daughter, and tells me to send him all the newspaper clippings where I'm featured. But it's beyond that now. It's about all the people that look up to me now as this woman who has established this organization or this company. And now it's actually scary. Sometimes I feel, oh my God, there's a lot of pressure now, because it's beyond that family unit. It's beyond that now. It's now a lot of people are looking up to you. So failure is not an option, but you also can't put yourself, sometimes I have to just kind of like, you know what, take it all in, but stay focused and don't let that pressure force you to make decisions that are not right. And which is where mentors still come into place. So even now I have mentors. I'm always seeking mentors to guide me, because mentors can not only guide you, but mentors that I've met have opened doors for me, even with my company. It's the same world that we live in, where, somebody who knows somebody can, guide you somewhere and open a door for you. So I think it's not just important to, think outside the box and, keep doing things that you can help yourself to, like, expand your knowledge and you move your career in different transitions, but as well along the way, seek mentors, be open-minded. I'm here today because I met Evangeline at work, and when we met, we had no clue I was going to be having this, launching this organization, and she was going to be doing this. She's always been passionate about mentorship, but look at us today. So connect with people, because you never know who can be a mentor or mentee for you, and how you both can, support each other in your future transitions.
Good points. Good points. Thank you for that. Pam, I'm gonna come to you, and everybody's wondering, everybody's thinking post-pandemic. What is the plans? What is the actions, next steps? So tell me, what is your vision for our future?
So just before I do that, I just want to comment on something Lola was talking about, because I think sometimes people think that they can only have one career. I haven't. And taking those risks to change are really important, and having people that you can talk to, but especially for women, we don't want to take those risks. And I think what you've said is so important, that just because you're in one stream doesn't mean you have to stay there all your life. And so post-pandemic, I would say, Evangeline, I'm actually hopeful. I think you started out by talking about the, since the pandemic started, we've also been seeing Canadians, well, North Americans, but I'll stick to Canadians, recognizing the systemic racism that we have in Canada. And I think the combination of the pandemic and what we're seeing across the country, and it's continued now for 6 weeks. This hasn't been a news story for a few days and it's gone away. We're still talking about it. I'm actually hopeful that we'll see some changes, and we'll see some really positive changes, and that people will start thinking differently about how we do things, about our institutions, how we deliver services as a government. I mean, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so it's hard to talk about post-pandemic right now because we're still in the middle of it. You know, we had an economic snapshot yesterday from the finance minister, but it was really still looking backwards because it's hard to predict where we're going to go. And where we'll be even in the fall. So one of the things that I think we all recognize as critical is childcare. The pandemic, we know, has impacted certain groups of people more than others, certainly women, people, racialized, Indigenous peoples. The impact has been greater for them. Now in Canada, we don't keep disaggregated data the way that it's kept in the United States, so it's a little harder to prove that. But it is starting to come out. So I am hopeful, though. I'm hopeful that we'll start to see some fairly major changes in our institutions going forward, and in the way that government delivers certain programs. We've, look at long-term care. We know that has to change. Look at, and I'll actually bring it up because Lola's been so awesome talking about her business. We provided supports to Indigenous businesses. We have not yet provided support to Black-owned businesses, but we know that they're impacted more than other small business. So I actually just spoke to Mary Ng, our small business minister, yesterday when I was in Ottawa about it, because I know that there is work being done on supports for Black-owned business because the impact has been greater. So there's segments of our society that we need to support more, but I'm hopeful, Evangeline, about where we're going, and I think, I'm proud of the Canadian government and the supports that we have been providing both to individuals and business, but we're not done yet. So,
why you mentioned Black businesses, and so why we are at that, I think I had received a question from one of our attendees, past attendees. I don't see the question here, but I'm going to ask you the question anyways. And this person wanted to know, what is the plan for Black businesses? He talked about the fact that small businesses that are owned by Black people, that normally they struggle because of lack of mentorship. And so the question is, what do you think your government is planning to do to help small Black business owners?
So I don't know right now exactly what is planned. I hadn't thought about that there's a lack of mentorship for Black-owned business, but that makes so much sense. When Lola talked earlier about not having mentors who looked like her, but if you get into a business, so having other people, I certainly have found as a woman, having other people to talk to who've had similar experiences has been really helpful. So I know I can speak to, things that we have done for Indigenous businesses, but I don't, because the programs are out there. I know the government though is focused on developing supports for Black-owned businesses because the impact has been greater. But I'm sorry, Evangeline, I don't know exactly what there'll be, so I'm going to have to stay tuned. But it's certainly something that myself and others have been pushing for. In particular, Greg Fergus, who's chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Black Caucus. It's something that had actually come up prior to COVID about supports for Black-owned business. And I think the pandemic has just heightened the need for those supports. So that the supports were needed before, they're even more needed now.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually see the question right now, but I think I covered it well. So it's time to go to Q&A. Thank you, everybody. My goodness, we have 11 questions. So we're going to try to get through it as fast as we can. Actually, we'll start from the first one.
Evangeline, could I just, as you're looking there, I just read the question, and I just want to let the person asking know that I will share that back with the government, the mentorship aspect, because it's something that I actually haven't heard before. So I'll certainly share that back.
Awesome, awesome. And you can let me know, because the person sent me a personal email, so I can follow up with them with any points that you have. Thank you, appreciate that. What's from an anonymous says, what's the worst career decision you have ever made? Ooh, anybody feel free to jump in on that.
I got something.
Okay. Go ahead.
I have something.
Go ahead.
I think the worst career decision I have ever made is to not move. Out of fear, out of feeling that I had reached my full potential. That, sooner or later, someone's going to figure out I don't really know what I'm doing, and it'll be in that next job. So just stay put. And I missed a wonderful opportunity. I wouldn't say I regret it, because I try to work through regret. But I think not having the courage, not connecting to people who would have bolstered and fortified my my bravery. I think one of the worst decisions I ever made was have a plum opportunity in front of me and shrink back from it. It's fresh.
Thank you for that.
I just wanted to kind of, I had a question on that, but as a woman, would you say that sometimes what made you hesitate on making those decisions were like related to your sex? Because sometimes we're more afraid to take risks because maybe children, family, we're more judged for making decisions later in our careers where it's not as flexible for us. Would that be?
Yes, certainly all the research would verify your assertion there that women tend to be more risk averse. I think there are higher costs for women in failure. I think there are collateral responsibilities that women have that they are balancing. And I think that the fear, I think that that imposter syndrome, and I'm not sure how many are familiar with that notion of that lack of confidence about your core competence does cause many women to flinch and to shrink back from taking risks. And I think, there's lots of literature on just gender upbringing and how boys are cultivated into being risk takers, and sometimes not positively so. Sometimes being risk takers in dangerous or reckless ways, and girls are really cultivated away from risk. So absolutely.
Thank you. I have another question here. Will you please share strategies that one can use to engage new mentors and foster these relationships, mid-career? Anybody can jump in.
I can take that.
Oh, go ahead. You sure? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Quickly, so strategies to find mentors. And this kind of follows the earlier discussion of finding your voice. So, once you take that journey and you're kind of clear on who you are and where you want to be and the direction you want to go, and you're clear about it in your actions and in the pursuit, the universe starts to draw itself towards you. So if you're very passionate about, being a superstar, people are going to start reaching out, not for record deals, but maybe to, for you to play for some gigs, and then that'll expand into, doing weddings, and the next thing it'll expand. But the point is that being clear and active around the things that you want to do. Again, people feel the energy, they feel the passion, and I've found in my career, and it's honestly a signal for me when I reach out to help people, to feel that. Like when I feel it in them, then it motivates me to say, yeah, I can help this person along, because I know that their motivation or action isn't going to stop with our last conversation. I know whether I help them or not, they're going to find a way. So I might as well help put what I can, each one teach one, and put some steam in the tank for them wherever I can. So just be very clear about what you want to do. Make it known around your network. Ask around, and you'll be surprised how many people will be willing to lend a hand, for sure.
Marrick, can I ask? Sorry, I just want to ask something on that though.
Sure.
What if you're not the shining star, but you still need mentors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, what advice do you give to someone who's not that shining star, and maybe they're not even working in a job that's their passion? They've got a job because they have to pay the bills, and they've got 2 kids at home, and they're a single mom, and so the choice to make, to do that stuff is hard, because life can be hard.
Mm.
How
do you make sure that they can find a mentor?
That's a great question. That is a great question, because I think that is a huge representation of the people that are looking for mentors. Those people that are just too busy to show how active they are and to really show their passion.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've learned is when I can't be active, just simply ask questions. Because if you don't have an opportunity or to put yourself in a position to take on a full-time mentor or somebody that's really going to sit and dive deep with you, just start stacking up answers to questions that you have around your passion. And that'll help kind of internally guide you on your self-motivation, your self-drive, and finding your own resources. But mentorship, just quickly, I want to go to this. I've been a people manager for 20 plus years, like frontline, very large team, 500 plus, that kind of thing. So, there's a difference, and people generally put them together, but coaching, from my experience, is reinforcing skills that are already there. Think of it as a little league coach, right? You're going to tell the kid, raise your elbows too high, you got to bring it down, bring your foot forward, right? They know how to hit, but you're just, working out the fine stuff. The mentoring piece is when someone is teaching you new skills, something that you are unaware of. So that's the thing. See somebody that is doing what you want to do, and just simply ask a question, and then ask another question. Maybe not from them, from somewhere else, and just build from there, as opposed to getting a real full-time mentor. And again, people are always willing to help, especially if it's a single question.
I like to jump in there, Marrick.
Oh, please. And while you're doing that, Chinedu, do me a favor and also explain how do you engage a mentor? I see 1 or 2 questions around that.
Definitely. And I can tell you that whether it be mid-career, starting off, or you're in college, high school, we use social media platforms all the time. And one that I am a huge advocate, I just realized I'm really addicted to LinkedIn. And I say that only because the same amount of time one can spend on the different media platforms, they can as well with LinkedIn, and do exactly what you said, Marrick. Ask questions, identify folks who are in the space that they want to be, or identify opportunities there on that particular platform. I can say that happened to me today. I actually, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, cold messaged someone who was in investment banking, Pam, right? And I'm in BD right now thinking of my next space. Where am I going to next? I have questions. I've answered as much as I could via Google. And now I want to talk to someone that might be able to really give me the real. And in order to do that, I just did a quick search. I said, in the Jersey area, New York area, has a background in investment banking, and can they, and then I looked for one thing where I thought that I could connect and resonate with, whether it be sports, whether it be a particular alumni, and sent a message, shot my shot. And that's the thing, we have to not be afraid to shoot our shot, right? And so I did that. Nothing happened in a week. Got a message 2 days ago saying, more than happy to talk. And we spoke and we connected. And I can tell you, I have now a peer as a mentor in the investment banking space that I can continue my conversation with. So I think we can use, and you know, Wi-Fi is free in a sense. If you go to particular public places, you can hop on there on your phone, and just start that way too. Because what I've learned, people are out there ready to help. They want to help. Sometimes they don't know how. They just need to get tapped on the shoulder, and they're willing to help. And you know, Marrick, you made another point about passion. That passion is contagious. Like, people gravitate towards passion. So you put your head down and you focus, as we've talked about, focus, find what you're passionate about. You put your head down, you focus, people are watching. And so once you do reach out and tap, they'll turn over. Not just the head either. They'll turn their whole body.
That's true. One of the things I say to myself these days is, what have I got to lose? And once I say that, I'm reaching out.
Yep.
The worst that can happen is no. And that brings me to one other question that somebody asked here. She talked about wanting to explore a new career, and you know, she would love to shadow someone. And I'm saying she, I don't know why, because it's an anonymous attendee. But I keep getting no's because they said having me shadow them would breach confidentiality policy. And her question is, and I'm saying her, how can I overcome this barrier when applying for shadowing positions in sensitive jobs?
So I guess I can jump in there because I've worked in investments where, you know, it's financial and, you know, information sensitive. And then also in IT where, you know, organizations are also trying to keep their projects sensitive as well. But you can shadow without actually shadowing and seeing all the information and the data that those organizations have. So shadowing could just be, hey, tell me how your day-to-day is. You know, what is a day like for you? What are the tasks that you have to do? What are the technologies that you use on a daily basis? You know, is there a way I can get trained on this technology? You know, and you know, that's how I have approached a lot of the coaching that I've done for people who want to get into the careers that I've been in. Sometimes I have cheat sheets I put together, and usually, you know, I say, okay, take this, and then if you have more questions, get back to me, because I find that creating that cheat sheet helps me because I get a lot of the same questions, and then so I send that, and then if they have more questions specific to what they need, then we have a talk about it, and I can guide them or do my own research. And don't be lazy. I find that sometimes people approach, when you meet people who are at that level, they're busy, and so you don't want to ask simple questions that Google will, you know, you want to ask a question whereby, hey, I've done my research and this is the information I found. What do you think? Don't ask me to go do the research for you, right? So I would say go to a mentor with information at least at a very minor level, and then they can now feed you with their own information. I would say don't be lazy. Sometimes people just want to be spoon-fed, and I think you have to do the work as well and meet halfway in a way. So I'll say that's my job shadowing experience.
I think the question just went up. I was just looking at the question. Has something to do with gender. Do you think that, I think the person said, and I was gonna come to you, Pam, do you think that gender plays any factor when it comes to mentoring? Can you?
I
Oh,
think you
sorry.
can have a mentor that's either gender, but
Sorry, Pam, I see the question again.
Okay.
It says, how do you think gender impacts the choice of a mentor? In other words, is gender a factor in deciding the right mentor?
Well, I mean, one of the things that when I started the Young Women in Leadership program, and I know you're talking about mid-career, but I think the feeling is the same. It's easier to look at someone as a mentor who, like, you can actually see yourself there. So you can have a mentor that's any gender, and I certainly have. But I think when you can actually see yourself in that position, and whether it's gender or race or whatever it might be, I think it's harder to picture yourself doing that job. And also I do think that men and women approach a job differently. We had Irving Shipbuilding come to Status of Women last session, and they were talking about that they were required by the government to hire female welders, so they had to have a certain percentage, and so they started. It was usually women that were older that went back to school, but they had a career path when they finished. They said they actually built better ships because the men were better at the gross motor skills and the women were better at the fine motor skills. It didn't mean one was better or more important than the other, but I think if you when it comes to gender, I think it's easier when you see yourself in that position, and so you certainly don't only have to have a female or a male mentor. I would say that you shouldn't just have one gender or the other, but I think it's really helpful. So that's why it makes it difficult. If you look at firefighting, there are only about 4% firefighters are women across the country. The number of fire chiefs across the country is I don't even know what that number is. Do women see themselves in that career because they never ever see themselves? There's very little diversity in firefighting either. So, how do we encourage people to even choose that at any age when they just don't see themselves there? So I think I do think gender plays a role, and I think that's why it's so important to have diversity in different professions, so that you do have, because each person, regardless of you bring your own whatever you've experienced, whatever background you've had, good and bad, to your position and to mentoring someone, right? So I think it's important to have that diversity of mentors so that you can get different perspectives on what you want to pursue.
Completely. I believe in having, I think you need a mentor for different aspects of your career. Careers, soft skills, leaderships. Basically, you need a mentor for how to navigate those challenges at work that oftentimes is the make or break of our career. And I have somebody asking a question here. This Adora, how do you explain a change in career to a prospective employer? And she gave an example as an immigrant. You come to Canada, you want to switch from healthcare or something else. How do you prove to the prospective employer that you can handle that change?
I can take that question.
Okay, and I know Carol also want to jump in, so go ahead.
Oh, Carol, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nate. Go ahead, Chinedu, and then Carol will.
Okay, I'll keep it short. You boil it down to the skill set that the new job that you're looking at, or a new opportunity you're looking at, that beckons its need in order to be successful in that role. So what I mean by that is identifying the skill sets that you have been able to cultivate in the current position and leveraging that in your conversation in whatever new opportunities before you. Because at the end of the day, you're selling yourself, your skill set, your acumen, and your ability to draw from experiences. And so if you can focus there, and then you demonstrate you're very willing to learn. And so those would be, you know, how I would approach it if it was me today and I had to sell myself. I would focus on the skill set and have it translate to the next opportunity.
Thank you. Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll build on that. I was going to say, and this is part of what I think, you know, Marrick has made clear. I think savvy employers don't see career variation the same way that they used to. I think that traditionally you looked for people to stay for 5 or 6 years in one role and have this clear path, and you know, it builds substantively and by institutional layer. And that game is over. And the best talent is going to come from looking at folks, as you've expressed, who understand their value proposition. Here's what I'm good at. Here, you know, here's what I'm good at, and can actually demonstrate demonstrate that they understand how they will transfer those skills. And you know, one of the piece of advice that I find myself giving often, and it seems so rudimentary and so tactical. Really go through, document your successes and your accomplishments religiously and consistently, and always update, always update. What have I done? What skills did I demonstrate? And then as you look to another position that doesn't have that direct connection, consciously draw the line. Sit with that job description, that job posting, and go, I can do this because I've done that. Here's an example of where I demonstrated the acumen required to be successful in that task. And it's again, it's very deliberate work to sit and do that. And I think I'm reinforcing what you've said. So,
Yeah,
but Evangeline, do you mind if I say something on that one too, though? Because you mentioned she's a new immigrant, and I have to say, with new immigrants, the number one thing that I hear is when they're looking for a job in Canada, you don't have Canadian experience. And so they're applying for jobs, and if it's someone from healthcare, they're probably coming where their qualifications haven't been recognized here. So they start applying for entry-level jobs, and then they're told you're overqualified, and they respond, but I just want to get Canadian experience because I can't get a job, and they get into this, and I have to tell you, I have a reception for new Canadians. Well, pre-pandemic I did. It's the number one issue that I hear from new Canadians is lack of Canadian experience and being told they're overqualified. And I think a couple of things they can do, I mean, Carol gave really good advice, is don't be afraid to go into, whether it's a settlement agency or places like Goodwill that offer career training, don't be afraid to go in there and have them help you look at your resume and do practice job interviews, because you're probably older, you've been working successfully in a career, and it's very strange to start going for these interviews again. You're not normally 20 years old anymore, and where you did it all the time. So I think don't be afraid to go and ask for help and ask for some of that, because it's really, really tough for new Canadians to find a job that recognizes their abilities the way that they should be.
You're very right, Pam. That question keep coming back, and I'm glad you touched on if you are overqualified, because that's also another question that we have here. Somebody also asked, how important is networking in finding a mentor? And I think they said, if it is important, how can one develop their networking skills? Chinedu, I think you mentioned something around that, so I don't know if you want to take that, or anybody can really jump in.
Yeah. So how can you network? How can you polish your networking skills, and how can you find, how important is networking to mentorship? Correct?
Yes.
Well, think of it like this. Would you rather, for those of you that are old enough to remember the yellow pages, would you rather flip a yellow pages and go line by line and say, hey, would you help me? Hang up, call again, hey, would you help me? Or walk into a room full of people and, get to talking and sharing your passion and your energy and explaining yourself and finding out what people are doing. Networking is probably the biggest thing you can do to help find a mentor, because the word spreads like wildfire, even within a room, for those of you guys that, frequent those events. I've had people, and I've done it, where I'm in a room and I meet someone, and, I start to get to know them, and then I say, hey, I was just talking to somebody half an hour, meet my new friend, and I pass them along like that. So it's essential, if you really want to expedite it and get to the most amount of people. How can you polish your networking skills? I would say live on the rim of your comfort. No one's saying, go to a networking event, kick in the door and do the moonwalk. But, when you, start with one conversation, then you start to see some familiar faces, or become more comfortable in your delivery of, talking about yourself and your value proposition and, what your desires are. And, next time talk to 3 or 4 people, fold in some questions, follow up with some people after the meeting, and the comfort starts to build. Consistency builds comfort. So it's one of those things where, you got to do it to get good at it. And the more you do it, the more I think you'll start to enjoy it. And then when you start to see that you can connect people through the conversations, you really start to see the value in it. So like I said, live on the rim of that comfort where, you're in front of people and talking to them. But constantly push it, give yourself little challenges and little goals when you go out. Okay, you know what? I am going to ask a question today. Okay, you know what? I want to meet 5 people. I want to get 6 business cards, that type of thing. So that's what I would suggest.
Amazing.
Can I build off of that?
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, turn your admiration into questions. So many times, I find that if you admire a particular skill, or maybe someone speaks very eloquently, how do they arrive to that? You turn it into a question, and then you have something to engage that person with, right? You can start with a compliment, followed up with how do you do that? How can I do that? The person will feel flattered, and the person will share everything they have to offer, right? So I think I'm not saying go out there and say, oh, nice shoes. I'm saying find something that really resonates with the ethos of that person, or the core, competency of that person, that you find that if you add on to your toolkit or your repertoire, that you can become better, and they will sense that authenticity. That's the beginning of networking at its finest and a potential mentor.
Absolutely. It's like you have to prepare. And there is nothing wrong with, especially these days that we have to do this connection via the social media. So feel free, jot it down, write it down, and then reach out. Pam, I have a question. I know you talked about Black-owned businesses, but somebody's asking the struggle. Black-owned businesses struggle in Canada due to being denied access to funds and loans.
Yeah, I actually read it and made a note of it in case you didn't ask me about it, because it was access to funding and loans and inbuilt systemic discrimination. And I know in the last, I guess it was about a year ago, we launched a women's entrepreneurship strategy where the government was providing loans and grants to women to grow their business. So I think something like that for Black-owned business, where you can provide the supports as well as, because, I mean, if you can't borrow money, you can't start a business. And if you can't have access to funds, you can't grow your business. And sometimes one of the issues is not just starting the business, but scaling it up. And so I made a note of that, actually, because it's very similar to what we had done for women entrepreneurs. It would be to launch something like that, and it is something that I know the government's looking at. But I made note of the gentleman's name, and Evangeline, I'm going to take this stuff back, and then when we do introduce something, I can send it to you to make sure these folks get the information. Okay. But thank you for the question. It's a really important one, and that's the barrier. I mean, Lola, I'd love to hear from you what your experience was when you were trying to start your business.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I think the reason why I was able to, we were able to fund the business because creating a product before you even start making money, it's not a service business, it's not a human resource business, it's a product business. So there's money for packaging, for label, for design. Before you even start hitting the stores, you spent tens of thousands of dollars. And the only way I could fund that was self-credit, because there's nobody going to loan money to. The food industry is a high-risk industry. Then I'm a woman, then I'm an immigrant, then I'm Black. I have so many strikes, right? So the odds are huge. And so, but because of believing in myself and establishing a company, we're able to fund this other company, but it's not been without a lot of struggle. It's been so much struggle to try and get funding. And even today, specifically for Canada, and I think it's something to take back to the government as well, the grants, most times when I do online searches, the private or government grants that I find are in the US. Like, oh, you have to be a US resident. Like, they're not enough. I know the population in Canada is not as comparable as it is to the US, but private organizations, they need to focus more on providing grants or even just providing access. It's not only just for Black businesses, but even more so Black businesses, because we don't have enough. But just in general, I think Canada is lacking where it comes to grants and creating access to funds for businesses, and now of course for women and for Black business owners, small business owners. So it's been a difficult journey, and but we keep pushing, and hopefully these conversations will lead to more opportunities.
When we talk about systemic racism, I'm just thinking about yourself going in and asking for a bank loan, and I'm going to be making African soup, and you're asking me, who's never tasted African soup, and I'm thinking, I'm not saying me personally, but my banker is sitting there going, oh, well, there's no market for that, because they don't. I mean, that's systemic discrimination, right? Is that like not looking at your business plan, and as a woman, it makes it even harder. But just the whole, that whole concept of not taking the business seriously because they don't have any experience with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. I want us to take one more question. Okay, she said, can you offer feedback on ways to recover from a business or career setback? Setbacks like missing out on big projects, being passed over for promotion, getting bad business review, or even bad reviews at work when you know that you're doing well. How do you handle that?
Can I jump in there?
Oh, sure. Oh, go ahead, Marrick. Thank you.
Yeah, and this goes back to kind of what Carol was saying earlier about keep a constant running log of the successes and the things you're doing. So I know we're talking about failures or setbacks, but it's super critical, beyond critical, to understand this is a long journey. You're gonna fail. You're gonna make mistakes. It's gonna happen. It has to happen. Like, that's what success is, overcoming those failures and mistakes and setbacks and didn't gets. So it's critical, I mean, to really look back at what happened, as much as it still burns, the job I applied for, my peer is now walking in as my boss, or, that was my job. And what do you mean? I put so much time into this report and into the year, and, I got a 2 out of 5 on my year-end rating, those type of things. It hurts, and you don't feel like it reflects your efforts, but really look at it in terms of what could I have done differently to get a different outcome, because it's really a cause and effect thing. What you did gave you what you got. So, if you were to encounter that scenario again and the opportunity comes up, would you be more vocal about your interest and your desire to be a part of that project, rather than saying, yeah, add me to the list, say, add me to the list next time, and then go and talk to the project owner and say, hey, listen, I'm really interested in that. I'm glad you talked about it. Here's how I feel like I can add to it. You know, and that will give you a better shot at it. And if that doesn't work, try something again next time, but don't take it as a roadblock. It's a road bump. So reflect on the failures or the things that you weren't happy about, and look at changing your approach for the next time. But again, all of the things are going to happen. It's essential that they happen for you to become successful. So just keep going with it.
I'm looking at the time is 7:29. There's so many questions that we haven't gotten to, but that means that all of you probably gonna come back. It's, my God, hasn't this been an
Time flies when you're
inspiring-
having fun.
It is, it is. Like, it has been an absolutely impactful series. We have learned a lot. I personally, I have learned a lot, but there is still plenty to do. We have to continue to make powerful differences in our collective future. Our Let's Talk Mentorship series, this is the third one, and this is really the final of the series. And after that, we move on to other things. But we have covered a whole lot of things. We've covered stereotyping, bias, marginalization, and equality. We tackled ways to find your voice, stay focused, recognize your competitive advantages. We provided insights into how to have a positive mindset. The importance of having a mental support system, my goodness, cannot be overstated. So I will conclude with a personal reflection on love and forgiveness, especially when you put into consideration everything that has been happening around us. For me, the love and forgiveness that I have received in my life is one of the reasons why I continue to have a purpose to do more, to give back. As a Black woman in corporate North American workforce in Canada precisely, I have experienced pushback, bullying sometimes. And what I have done and what I have chosen to do is to use my experiences to impact change, to use dialogue as a medium of bridging cultural gaps, to have the courage to forgive so that we can come together to build corporate atmospheres that professionals can thrive. I want everybody to remember, I think it was a quote by C.S. Lewis, and it says, there are far better things ahead than any we leave behind. So I'm challenging everybody today. I'm asking everybody that attended all of our series, especially those that are here, how would you contribute towards creating exceptional professionals? How can you help to enable Black professionals? I believe that we have a whole lot of work to do. I feel that in the leadership spectrum, there are very few Black people, and Lola mentioned something around how important it is that we see people that look like us. And I believe that it is very important that we continue to enable Black professionals, all professionals in general, so that that leadership spectrum will be more inclusive. I thank you, panelists. I thank you, everybody, for your time and for your commitment to continue to provide your services, to continue to share your experiences and your stories and be vulnerable, because it's not easy to share your experiences, especially when everybody's out there. It's gonna be out there. This is social media. So thank you. I really appreciate your time. Keep your eyes, everybody, please keep your eyes on our website and our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Black Mentorship Inc. for our upcoming events. We are actually right now collecting lists of CEOs that will be willing to spend a day with our mentees to mentor them, to show them, that area of leadership, what it looks like. So please stay tuned for details and feel free to continue sending us your questions, comments at our email, blackmentorship@gmail.com. I apologize for going 3 minutes over time. However, this has been a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you so much. I am your moderator, Evangeline Chima. Have a wonderful evening. Until next time, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right, thank you,
Evangeline.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. We still have this is awesome. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Carol,
guys.
Marrick, Lola, Chinedu.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Mwah.